another edition of the Contractor's Secret Weapon weekly podcast with your hosts, Dave Negri. This program is dedicated to helping contractors, remodelers, painters, roofers, roof cleaners, and business owners in the construction industry gain an unfair advantage over the competition. This program supplies you with information that the competition doesn't even know exists. This session brought to you by ContractorsSecretWeapon.com.
Before we get into the conversation with you, I just want to do a shout out to our sponsors who help promote Contractor's Secret Weapon and just some of the things that they have in store for you, our listeners. Hey, is your phone ringing enough? Do you want it to ring more with highly motivated and qualified buyers that contact you, the contractor, directly? No more waiting for the phone to ring. Just answer that phone. Best Home Services leads are dedicated to making your phone ring with motivated buyers that call you directly. There's no obligation to talk with them. Just go to ContractorSecretWeapon.com/money. Fill out the form to secure your discount on the setup fee. Do it today. This special will not last forever. Check them out at ContractorSecretWeapon.com/money.
Running a small business is no easy task, and I should know because I had a service company for almost 10 years. I am the founder of a software called Radius Bomb, and it's unbelievable. And for all the listeners of Contractor's Secret Weapon, we have a special offer for you to check out. If you want to send hyper-targeted, laser-focused, super personalized postcards to your exact prospects using a map while sitting in your underwear, then go to ContractorSecretWeapon.com/Radius Bomb, and we'll give you your first 100 postcards for free. Just go to ContractorSecretWeapon.com/Radius Bomb.
Hey, it's Dave Negri with Contractor's Secret Weapon. Thanks for stopping by today. I'm excited you're here, and boy, have I got a great guest for you today. David Barnett. He's been working with small and medium-sized businesses over 20 years. He's been a business loan broker, a business broker. He's sold over 36 businesses for others and worked as a consultant for over 200 more sale transactions. David works with people trying to buy and sell businesses all around the world, and he has authored 7 books. 3 of them are Amazon bestsellers. David maintains a YouTube channel, which is pretty awesome, of over 250 videos, all about buying, selling, managing, and finances small businesses. And today, as we go through our talk back and forth, you're going to find out some very interesting things about you may never even thought about before, when you're getting ready to sell a business, and then again, maybe about buying a business too. So let's welcome our guest. David, I am just excited that you're with us today, and I'm so thrilled that we could have you, and because you've got some really interesting things to tell our listeners today, don't you?
Hey, well, thanks for having me on. I'm looking forward to it. And I hope the conversation is going to be interesting.
I think it'll be fun. I think that, tell us a little bit about your background, how you got started, where you are, and where you went to, and where you came from within the next half hour. No, I'm just kidding. In the next few minutes, yeah. And then
that's even harder.
Yeah,
okay.
yeah, I know it's harder.
So ever since I was a kid, I was looking for ways to make money. Always looking for ways to make money, from cleaning snow out of people's driveways, because I'm in Canada,
okay,
or to mowing people's lawns, or anything like that, and went to university thinking that if I took a business degree, I would become a businessman. Took me about 3 years of that to realize they were trying to turn me into a Fortune 500 bureaucrat, one of those middle managers in a really big company. And so when I got out of there, I began my real education, which was actually selling ads for a Yellow Page publisher. This was back at the end of the 90s when if you typed plumber into Google, you got some guy in California, and that he was the only guy, right? they hadn't figured out local searching yet. So Yellow Pages was really important in those days for people who had a leak in their house anywhere else other than California. And so I got to go out and meet all these different business owners and managers and figure out how they did business, how they made money, and what kind of customers they wanted, because I was trying to drive business, make the phone ring, I guess, in those days. And eventually I knew that the phone book days were numbered. So I decided to get out. I started a business with a partner. We built it up over about 1.5 years, and then I sold it, and was told after I sold it by the buyer that the big reason why he bought the company was not actually what we were doing or the money we were making. It was because he wanted to adapt our systems into his other business.
Huh.
And that was a big eye opener for me. I then started to get into financing. I became a commercial debt broker for small business. So I would arrange capital and operating leases on equipment. I would arrange factoring facilities, which is when you have receivables you want to turn into cash today, help people get bank loans, lines of credit, that kind of thing. And when the financial crisis came in 2008, over half the companies I was using as a source of capital went under.
Wow.
And I realized that I had to do something different because my whole deal pipeline shriveled up. And one of the things I had noticed is that people who were coming to me because they wanted to buy existing businesses to find money, they always seemed to have big problems with their deals because they weren't dealing with the right kinds of people. And it was always either an accountant, a lawyer, or a real estate agent who, kind of knew maybe a quarter to half of how to make a deal happen. And people were ending up in bad deals, poorly structured deals, not having the right paperwork, losing deposits, all kinds of bad stuff. And so I realized that there was probably an opportunity for someone to become a business broker and really fill the gap here where I live in my local community. And so I chose to go with a big international brand of business brokerage because they gave me access to training. So over a 2-year period, I worked under an experienced gentleman and went through and actually spent 3 weeks in different training camps, a week in Ottawa, a week in Atlanta, and a week down in Orlando, and finally obtained my certification to become a business broker. And I was the first person in my region to ever do that. I ran my own business brokerage office. I sold 36 companies for other people in 3 years.
Wow, that's great.
It is great, but business brokerage sucks. It's a terrible business. It's exciting. And for a guy like me who loves the challenge every day of figuring out a new problem, I loved it. But here's the problem is that business brokerage, to a great extent, is based on real estate brokerage, where, as many of your listeners know, you own a house, you want to sell it, so you engage a real estate agent, you sign some papers, and when they sell your house, you pay them, right?
Right.
And so business brokerage is along the same lines. Here's the problem, though. Sometimes it can take years to sell a business. And so when I first got into business brokerage, I signed up this fried chicken franchise. That was in October of 2008. And in December of 2011, my last business I sold before getting out of the industry was that fried chicken franchise.
Oh no, it followed you out of the business, huh?
It for 3 years.
Wow.
I worked on that file without a penny until it was done.
That stinks. That's what you call a long sales cycle.
It's people will often say, "Oh, it's like feast or famine," and I'm like, "No, it's famine and not famine." When in those 3 years, when people hear 36 businesses over 3 years, they think, "Wow, that's pretty even." A business a month, that's a pretty good cash flow. There were 2 periods of 9 months with no closings.
Wow!
And I was paying all my household expenses, my office overhead, my assistant, my rent for the office, all the utilities, all the advertising, etc., laying out close to $9,000 a month.
Wow. Between
home and office.
Yeah.
And did it for 9 months in a row, and then you have a deal close, and somebody hands you, a $50,000 or $60,000 check,
and it's not enough.
It's never enough.
Yeah.
And when it is enough, when the money stays in the bank, you're afraid to spend it because you can never be certain about when the next one's coming.
Right.
And so I got out at the end of 2011, and I said, "This stinks." And I went, and the worst thing that can ever happen to an entrepreneur happened to me. I got a job, and so I started working for a bank, and I was responsible for clients around a region, from one side to the other, about 10 hours drive across. And so I spent a lot of time in my car, like visiting clients and things. And my cell phone started to ring, and it would be people that were referred to me. And, I would answer the phone and be, some guy says, "I want to sell my business. I heard you're the guy." And I'd say, "No, I'm not a business broker anymore. I can't help you. You need to call the guy who took over my office." And then the phone would ring again, and the phone would ring again. And finally, after about 3 times in about 4 weeks, this person called and he said, I'm trying to buy a business, and I've been to my attorney and I've been to my accountant, and both of them are telling me where I need to end up, but neither of them seems to be able to help me to get from here to there.
Wow.
And I'm not quite sure what I need to ask for. And I've been given a bunch of stuff that they told me to ask for, and I don't know how to navigate it. And I just need help. And I said, I've got the skills and the knowledge and the training to take you through this process, but I'm not a broker anymore. So I'll have to work with you like a consultant. I'll have to charge you by the hour, and I have a job, so I can only work with you on the evenings and weekends. And then I just closed my mouth and waited and started counting the seconds of dead air. And then finally the guy said, well, so then you can meet me Saturday at 9? Cool. And I said, yeah, I can meet you Saturday at 9. And that's was the beginning of a little side hustle that over the course of 2.5 years eclipsed my employment income.
Wow.
And
that's awesome.
And for about the last 2.5 years now, that's all I do. So I work with people all over Canada, the US. I have clients in the UK, and I've worked with people in Australia as well. And I help people either buy a business, I help them sell their business, or I help people get ready to sell their business. So some businesses need a little bit of spit and polish to get them in a state where they're going to be able to be sold. And so those are the things I do today. And I inform people about that through things like my books. I've got 7 books on Amazon. 3 of them were bestsellers. I've got a YouTube channel with 250 videos all about buying, selling, managing, and financing small businesses. And then I come out and meet people like you and do these talks and just to let people know things. And if they're ever ready and they want to, then they can reach out to me and get some help.
Well, that's pretty cool because I remember, years ago when I was doing some coaching for my painting business, it was they had a really close relationship with the business broker.
Mm-hmm.
And like the business broker would say, listen, here's what you need to do. We can only do so much for you, but if you're not financially ready, if you're not mentally ready, if you're not don't have your systems in place, then it's going to, and like they would say, without all that stuff in place, it's going to take anywhere from 2 to 5 years.
Well,
because you got to work through it all you got to have a sellable business. Just because you think because you have a business doesn't mean that it's sellable today.
Here's the way I liken it for people is that the bigger the market is for something, the more buyers there are going to be.
Right.
The likely chance of finding someone sooner is greater. So if you are a guy who has a certain experience and a certain skill set and a certain knowledge base, and you're running a business and everything's in your head and it's all scratched on notepads you carry around in your truck, and nothing really is written down and everything's just managed by the seat of your pants, the only person who can ever take that business and buy it from you is someone who has the exact same set of skills, knowledge, and experience. Right? And so there's not very many of those, but they'll take any teenager off the street and have them working next day in McDonald's. Right?
Right.
And it has to do with systems.
Sure.
Right? We do this, then we do this, then we do this, then we do this, and this is how we manage it to make sure we're doing it correctly. And so with those systems and policies and procedures and everything put into place, all of a sudden the market for the business expands well beyond the people who have the same experience as you, and it grows to anyone who has an interest and is, capable enough to come in and learn something new.
Wow, that's pretty amazing.
So you sell it faster, and if other people can see that they can run it, then you get more than one person interested. You might even be able to sell it for a little bit more money.
Cool. And I like the way you phrased it. I don't know if you did that on purpose. So people who are buying the business can see how to run it, not work it.
Yeah. Yeah. Because, when I do my live seminars and when I'm writing in my books and stuff, I spend a great deal of time talking about vocabulary and language and words. So things like people will use the terms company, business, and corporation, like they'll mingle them all up, but they actually have very different meanings.
Okay.
And so people will say, I have a business, and I'll say, great. So in your business, do you write yourself a paycheck that is equal to or greater than what you would earn doing the same work for somebody else? Because to me, if you have a business, you have your salary or your wages,
Right.
which should be equal to what you would earn someplace else, and then you have a profit, right?
Right.
And so if you have a profit above your wages that your time and effort is worth, that's a business. If you're working for yourself and you're just taking the same amount of money out as you would if you worked for somebody else, then according to me, you don't actually own a business, you own a job.
Yes.
Right.
And not even a good paying job.
Well, and there's a lot of people out there who like the flexibility
Right.
of calling their own shots, and they want to own a job. And if they have to work any harder to earn that profit, they'd rather go fishing, and that's fine. That's what they want to do. And then there are the people who work all week and they take home less than what they would if they worked for somebody else. And those are the challenging situations that I call hobbies, because a hobby is when you put time and effort into something, right?
Right.
And so the guy who's toiling in his business, taking home less than he would if he worked for somebody else, what's sad is that sometimes they think they have a business when in fact they're contributing free labor to the enterprise, and they're not getting the same pleasure as the guys who are building the model railroad sets in their basement. Those guys know that they're putting time and money into something because they like it.
Right.
Whereas the guy who's working hard in his quote unquote business for less than he's worth, he's just putting time in thinking he's developing something that's going to be worth something someday. And this is the biggest thing that I have to show people that hurts people the most, unfortunately, when they decide that they want to sell, is the very first thing we have to realize is, do we actually have a business to sell?
Right. Yeah. So what, and from your expertise or your experience, when people, a lot of business owners come to you and they want to sell their business, what's the number one motivating reason?
Well, there is the number one motivating reason is burnout and fatigue,
Okay.
followed closely by divorce, poor health, and the need to relocate. And then there's retirement. And when I'm talking to people about how they run their businesses, I like to repeat those 5 things, because only one of the things on the list is something you plan for.
Right.
The other 4 things oftentimes they happen to you, right?
Right.
And so you're going along, happily through life, running your business, doing your thing, and then all of a sudden some personal event happens that forces you to realize, hey, I need to get out of this business now. And that's why I'm always telling people that they need to be running their business as though it was going to be put up for sale tomorrow all the time. Because quite frankly, something could happen tomorrow that might make you want to put the business up for sale, and you won't have time to get it ready. Or you'll end up, for example, selling it for far less than you could if it were properly prepared. And what's funny is when you actually prepare your business for sale, implementing systems, policies, procedures, getting everything down on paper, having the tools to manage it, etc., a miraculous thing happens, Dave.
What's that?
In almost every case, the businesses become easier to run and more profitable. And it actually becomes a greater pleasure and more lucrative in the present, even though you're not selling it, because you've gone through the steps of getting it ready to go.
Yeah, so you've got the business you've always dreamed of.
Yeah. What you dreamed of before you started, being able to go and take vacations and have other people do the work. A lot of people in your audience are probably tradespeople, and so they have a certain skill set where they know how to do certain type of work. And at a certain point, if you're going to grow this business, you have to get to the point where you stop doing that work with your hands. Right? And you have to let other people do it, because a certain trade skill is only worth a certain amount of money. It tops out at a certain level. But owning a business, the value you can put into planning your business and making sales and growing the business and nurturing your employees is always going to end up eventually being worth far more, which means the owner has to get off the front line, right? And for a lot of people, that's really hard. My former father-in-law is an auto mechanic, and And he often said that the biggest challenge in his business was learning that he had to put down the wrench.
Yeah. Well, I think a lot of guys, they go into their trade or their business, and especially the trades, and because they can do it better, they want to do it better. They don't want to be an employee any longer. However, it's not their ability to do the trade per se that's going to make them the long-lasting results in their lifestyle. It'll keep them, at a good paying or even a high-paying job if they run their business right from that standpoint. But what about later on?
Well, exactly, and it's the difference between owning a job and owning a business, because
right.
in a business, what we're doing is creating a system to solve people's problems for money, right?
Yeah.
And so when I talk with people who are contractors, I really do have two buckets I put my contractors into. There are the contractors who bid and tender for jobs, right? So, big, shopping mall decides that they want to have someone, resurface the parking lot or whatever. They're going to go to tender. That's a big purchase, right? They're going to get different contractors to bid against each other.
Sure.
And as long as they're reasonably confident that the different people bidding are capable, they'll go with the one who bids the lowest price, right? And then there's the other bucket of contractors. The bucket of contractors where they develop a brand name, and the brand name becomes known, and every time someone has a problem with their wires or a problem with their faucet, they're saying, oh, it's time to call that company, right? And it's not attached to a person. It's the business's name. And over time, you get this population of people who simply become aware when we have a problem with our pipes, these are the people we call. And that's true business goodwill rather than personal goodwill. And a lot of the businesses that bid on contracts, they actually have a hard time developing goodwill because it always comes down to price. And you don't want to be in that commodity bucket.
No, not at all.
Right. Because then at the end of the day, what you end up building up in your business is you build up maybe a bunch of equipment that could be worth something, at the end of the day if you're going to sell it. But without a constant stream of people calling or emailing for service, you're not going to be able to have that goodwill component. So that's what I always advise people to do is you want to be able to develop a brand and be able to create goodwill in that brand so that people say, I'm going to call that company, and they really don't care who it is that actually shows up on their front doorstep.
So, and I know that, this is something that I always talk about and not being the commodity and, creating more being the expert in your field so that people come to you. But, and I'm sure that you do that too. You tell people that that's what they need to do in order to make their companies ready for sale. But now, do you find, and maybe we talked about the different things that people, why they sell their businesses, and I'm sure that this is probably one of the reasons that you got into the consulting end of it, as opposed to being the business broker, is that a lot of them, you have to help them get to a point to where they can sell it. But then they, like you said, they they like their business now. So yeah, they gotta.
Well, the sort of the person who is credited with this line of thought, of course, is Michael Gerber with his E-Myth book. And back when I was a business broker, I used to get these people that would come to see me. They wanted to sell their business, and I would take a look at what was going on. And I would say, yeah, you need some systems in here. You need to make it so that people can see that they'll be able to come in and make it work, make the business run. And I would tell them about the book, and then they wouldn't read it. And then I made an even bigger mistake. I actually bought it for them. I gave a copy of the book to a few people. And of course, it just gathered dust. And I was dumbfounded because at that point in my life, I believed that people existed along a spectrum of smarter people and not so smart people. And I was like, how can these people who are clearly intelligent, smart people that have been able to build these businesses not be smart enough to understand that this is what they have to do? I've explained it to them over and over again. Why aren't they doing it? And that was before I had run into things like the Myers-Briggs personality types, where there's actually 16 different types of personality. And that's when I began to realize, hey, wait a minute. I'm seeing this because of who I am and because of the way my brain works and because I always see desired outcomes and then think backwards. And other people aren't like that. Other people, are extroverted and they are more emotional. They're feeling people versus thinking people. Like all these different variables come into play. So it's perfectly reasonable to understand now that someone can build up a business and be a very smart person and really not be able to just sit down with pen and paper and draw out the workflow of every person in their business, right? Yeah. Some people would rather claw their eyes out than do that. And I understand that now. So I'm much more sympathetic. So what I then realized is I need to actually adopt my own medicine to this scenario. So I sat down and I created a 13-step method to systematize an existing operating business.
Oh, wow.
And my criteria was they have to be baby steps that are easy to understand, that are very clear, that people can do step by step. It can't take a lot of time, right? Because that's the other thing people don't have. They don't have a lot of time. And you have to be able to see progress and see results as you go through. So the very first step in my process is actually to ask the entrepreneur, describe your life to me in 10 years' time. What is your income? How many weeks of vacation do you take, right? What is the life you wish to have? And then we can say, what kind of organization will be required to provide this to you? And then we can design the organization. And then we can start to look at the roles and we can start to assign tasks and responsibilities to the roles. And so the whole thing is just step by step by step. And what people end up with for the first time ever in their businesses, they end up with job descriptions for the different people that work in their businesses, and they end up with accountability tools. And usually what happens, Dave, every time is when they start to implement this stuff, they begin to realize that they've got people in their organization that are either underemployed or aren't pulling their weight or aren't doing things the way they had originally told them to do things. And so they're able to address problems they didn't even know existed, right, to make their business operate better.
Wow.
But then more importantly, they're able to now hold people to account for certain standards. And they're able to measure things they were never able to measure before. I've got one client who went through this process with me, and they were bidding jobs, and they believed that they were giving themselves a 60% markup, which was their target.
Right.
And after we got the financials sorted out and got separated out the direct costs and the direct labor from the overheads more accurately, we realized that they were never hitting that level. So we implemented a workflow tool. So now there was literally a piece of paper that followed the job from birth to the grave, right, from start to finish. And every person who put their hands on the job had certain inputs that were recorded. Guess what? They were underestimating labor sometimes as much as 40%.
Whoa.
They didn't know.
Yeah. No,
because
that's pretty cool. Yeah.
In their business, their materials would go to a shop first and there'd be prep work done, and then it would go into the field for installation. And they were underestimating the time it was taking to get it ready in the shop. And they were also underestimating the wasted time. So, how long did it take the guys in the shop once they'd finished one job to get set up for the next one? And once you're measuring how long they're working on each job, then you can say, well, wait a minute. They worked on jobs for 32 hours, but they're here for 40. Does that really mean they're spending 8 hours doing changeover? And they were, right?
Wow.
And that labor wasn't accounted for either. And so once they actually started to manage what they were doing and record things, all of a sudden the quoting got better. And now they're hitting their target markups.
Interesting. It's kind of funny that you said that about the numbers and everything, because I just did a podcast with someone, and the whole crux of the podcast was, every successful business owner knows their numbers. And so we named it The Numbers Will Set You Free.
Well,
in a sense, yeah.
when I meet a business owner, I'll start asking them questions. What were your sales last year? What was your profit last year? And if they have no idea,
Oh yeah.
it's actually a red flag for me.
Sure.
Because it means that they're hiding from their own numbers. People who are doing well, they look at that stuff and they're excited by it and they want to understand what's going on. And when people aren't doing so well, they run from it.
Yeah, and because they really don't know how to measure it. That's the funny thing. Yeah, because revenue does not meet profit. Just because I increased my revenue this year doesn't mean that I've increased my profit. I learned that one a long, long time ago. It's kind of funny, yeah, because I've had people call. They had big jobs or a consistent, steady workflow, and they go, "We can keep you busy," and I go, "That's not what I want." And they go, "What do you mean? You don't want to stay busy?" I said, No. I said, "I want to stay profitable," and that's doesn't seem like that's going to work for me working for you. So keep somebody else busy, But yeah, no, it's kind of funny on how we look at things, and because we're afraid of the truth of it all, we sort of hide from it.
Yeah, and I think that's because many people, they're not fans of conflict. Mm-hmm. And one of the things that happens, I think, is people end up in conflict with themselves. And it is very comforting and easy to be busy, right?
Yeah.
And, think about people passing each other on the street. Are you keeping busy? Are you busy? Like, how are things going? Oh, we're busy, right? Yeah. And if people are busy, they think they must be doing something right. But to your point, that doesn't equal profit.
Right.
And at the end of the day, I often see guys like, I had a roofing client once, and he grew one time to be about 6 crews working at a time. And then later he scaled himself back to 3. And he told me that he felt that he was able to make more money running 3 crews than 6, because he knew that he was going to have to start adding other supervisors or management if he was going to continue to be at that level or grow. And it represents a hump, right? That's an investment in your business. Yeah. Another couple of salaries have to come in. And then to really get further ahead, you then have to grow beyond and get even bigger. Yeah, and with that, it comes with a whole bunch of other different headaches. Yeah. And this guy didn't want to deal with it. So he actually scaled back a little bit and was able to keep an eye on things himself without having to bring on those other supervisors.
And that's great. I mean, because if that's where you want to be, that's awesome. But if you get down the road and you've been to 6 and you go back to 3 because you're afraid of raising your prices to make you where you need to be in the marketplace to bring other people on, then that's just another learning process.
Yeah, and pricing, I think, is back earlier in the conversation we talked about hobbies versus jobs versus businesses. And I find that for some reason, people will think about their worth, and maybe this is more so for newer entrepreneurs or people getting into business. They'll think about their worth in employment terms.
Yes.
So if they worked somewhere for $25 an hour, they have a hard time telling someone that they cost $100, right? But they don't adequately consider the overheads, the vehicle costs, the advertising costs, the marketing costs, right? And, I'm in consulting, but half of my time is spent doing sales.
Yes.
Half my time is spent, sharing a conversation with you, creating stuff online, talking with people who may wish to engage me. And so all of that effort is required to even get the customer on board. And they're the ones that have to pay for that time.
Right. Yeah. Because it's the outcome. No, I completely understand. Yeah.
Yeah.
And the cool thing about that, I learned from a continuing education course that I had to take, believe it or not, for painting, which is kind of crazy, but that's neither here nor there. The guy said, here's the thing that I want you all to remember, and this is for every contractor, every tradesman, whatever. He said, there's mystery, or there's margin in mystery. And so everyone is giving him that, what are you talking about? He goes, listen, an electrician gives you a bill, you just write him a check because you have got no clue what he just did. He said, you take an air conditioning guy and he gives you a bill and you just write him a check because you have no clue what he did. But now you take a carpenter, and it doesn't matter whether he is the best carpenter in the world. As far as most people's concerned, he's cutting with a saw and he's hammering it in with a nail, and he says, I can do that. So he says, so whatever you do, your pricing goes according to what they'll do and what they won't do. So that was a big eye opener for me.
It's very true. It's very true. I've got a lot of experience with like the junk removal and waste industries, and in smaller communities, people know where the landfill is.
Yes.
Right. In big cities, they don't.
Right.
They have no idea where it goes. Right. And so in big cities, guys are able to charge more and get better margin.
Yeah. Because
the person who hires them, who has to get rid of things once or twice a year, they have no idea where it goes. They have no idea how to do it themselves. So they just say, hey, take this stuff away. Yeah. And in smaller communities, people go, well, you want that much to take this stuff away? Geez, I could rent a U-Haul truck and I could drive it over there myself, right? Everyone starts to think in terms of them doing it themselves. And of course, when people do things themselves, they don't consider their time as being valuable.
Right. Yeah, I had that with a doctor once. He was complaining about my pricing, and I'm going, you're kidding me, right? And he goes, what do you mean? I says, I'm charging you, maybe a third or a tenth of what you make, and you could go to work today and make what I'm going to charge you for the whole job. Are you kidding me? And he goes, oh, yeah, you're right. It's sometimes you just got to make people think. I don't know. Dave, this has really been awesome. How do our listeners get in touch with you so that you can help them? And just talking with you today, there's so many ways that you can help so many businesses, whether it's getting them on the right track, helping them get their business for sale, or even if they're considering buying another business to add to the one they already have, which to me sometimes is smarter than starting another business.
Yeah. If they come over to davidcbarnett.com, that's my blog site. That's kind of the nerve center of the whole thing.
Okay.
There are 300 articles, over 250 videos now. They're all about buying, selling, financing, and managing small businesses. And it's all driven by questions sent in by people who are my readers or viewers.
Cool.
So if they have questions and they want me to answer, send them in, because I've told everyone that's what I want for Christmas this year, is more questions, because that's where the content comes from.
Sure.
And then from my site, they're also going to find that I've got different books that I've written, and I've also got some online courses about buying, selling, and organizing businesses that they can do. And if anyone wants to reach out to me, they can get my contact information there as well. And I look forward to being able to help people. The reason, the mission for my business is to help people avoid bad deals. And so when I work with people that are buying, I help them avoid bad deals and show them why the deal they're looking at doesn't make sense. And when I'm working with sellers, the most frustrating thing to me is when I have someone reach out to me, they want help to sell a business, and I go through an evaluation process. I show them what it's worth and what a likely reasonable offer would be. And they say, Dave, they said somebody offered me that a year ago. and they didn't take it because they didn't know. Right.
Yeah.
And for sellers, like we said earlier, most of the reasons, 80% of the top reasons why people sell a business has to do with a personal issue. Time becomes the thing that's important.
Right.
It's making a good deal, but making it on a timeline that allows you to move on for whatever reason is pushing you out the door.
Cool. That's awesome. I really, again, thank you so much for being with us and sharing all your expertise and all your knowledge with us today. I got a ton out of it. I know our listeners will too.
Awesome, Dave. Thank you so much for having me.
Cool. Again, I want to thank you for joining us and investing your time with us today. I hope you enjoyed this week's episode, and if you did, go to iTunes and give us a shout out. You can also go to our website, www.contractorsecretweapon.com, and check out today's episode and leave us a comment in the bottom of the page. And if you haven't gotten your 15 secret weapon strategies to getting higher-end customers, get it while you're at the website. Also, I want to thank again our sponsors for keeping this podcast alive, for your profit-making pleasure. And so go be profitable this week. Work smarter, not harder, and learn how to leverage your time and your knowledge so that you can be more profitable. Again, see you next week.
Thanks for joining us for another weekly episode of the Contractor's Secret Weapon podcast with Dave Negri. We would love to hear your comments about this episode, so visit us online at www.contractorsecretweapon.com and let us hear your thoughts. If you were listening via iTunes, please leave us a positive review. The more positive reviews we receive, the more other contractors will benefit from this show. Thank you, and see you next time here on the Contractor's Secret Weapon podcast.